Hi, this is just going to be a really quick reminder of how to build your concession paragraph. Your concession paragraph is where you acknowledge a counterclaim and you rebut it because you're conceding or you're acknowledging to the other side of the argument. You're going to find that a lot of this is review since we've already learned it, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of advice on how it's going to relate to your note cards and the research that you're doing on your charities. So, as you might remember from before, some of the vocabulary counter argument is just your opponent's strongest argument against your claim. Remember, your claim is for everybody is that your charity is worthwhile and deserves support. That's what everybody's claim is, regardless of what your charity is. You're arguing that your charity deserves support. So, what would your opponent's argument against that be? In other words, what would your opponent, what would somebody who disagrees with you say about why your charity actually doesn't deserve support? And then the next piece of vocabulary is the rebuttal or the refutation. So if someone rebuts or refutes your argument, that just means you're going to prove why the counter argument is weak, invalid, or not as good as yours. Okay, so that's all review. There are 3 steps to this. The first step is to acknowledge the strongest possible counterclaim. You need to recognize the argument that would be used to oppose your claim. What would somebody against you say? Then you need to refute their counterclaim by pointing out why it's weak or illogical or invalid. The last step, and this is where your NoodleTool note card research comes in. You need to provide evidence that supports your rebuttal from step 2. A lot of people were wondering, do you have to find a counterclaim? Like, are you going to research one? Probably not. You're probably going to just use logic to determine a counterclaim. And you're also probably going to use logic to refute that counterclaim. But then you need textual evidence or research-based support that supports your refutation. I'm going to give you an example. But before I do the example, let me just review some common lead-ins. This will help when you begin writing your paper. We've already talked about this a lot, so this is a review. Remember, you're going to say something like, although some people believe X, in reality, Y is actually true. All of these lead-ins will help you as you craft your paper several steps from now. The one thing to remember is that this should be respectful, not condescending. Okay, here is an example. First, I want to acknowledge my counterclaim. Here's my acknowledgement. Oftentimes, people argue that charities focused on human needs take a greater priority over charities centered on the needs of animals. Now I'm going to refute that. While it is undeniable that human needs are important and the world is full of extreme human suffering, it is also true that without our help, animal-based charities such as Possibilities that provide critical aid to animals in need will not be able to exist. So, as you can see, the first 2 things, my acknowledging of the counterclaim, I'm saying I know that most people think that we should do human charities, and then I argue back, the one thing that I have done is I have conceded and I've said, you're right, human needs are important and I can't argue that. But animal needs are also important, and if we don't help these animal charities, those animal charities won't exist. Okay? Now, here's where the research comes in. I've just claimed that animal-based charities won't be able to exist without donations. I need to now prove that with research. So here's me supporting my rebuttal with research, the last part of this slide. According to Charity Navigator, a nonprofit organization that evaluates and rates American charities, the biggest animal-based charities bring in only 1/10 of what the largest charities in the U.S. bring in. In other words, animal-based charities only receive a fraction of the donation amounts that other charities receive. They are already at a disadvantage. Furthermore, Possibilities, that's my charity, explains on their website that most of their funding comes from private donations, while around 5% is from government sources. This means that they rely heavily on donors to help their cause. In short, giving to animal-based charities, especially one as effective as Possibilities, is the only way these life-saving organizations can continue to exist. So, this whole third part where I supported my rebuttal with research, all of that is helping to make my rebuttal even stronger because I'm fighting back to my counterclaim and I'm fighting back with evidence, and that's always the best type. So what exactly needs note cards? If you take a look here, I've highlighted part of my support with red and part of it from blue. The red part is all of the research that I got from Charity Navigator's website. I would have a citation for it and a NoodleTool note card for it. The blue part is all of the research that I got from my charity's website, Possibilities website. Again, I would have a citation and I would have a note card. What I don't have a note card for is my acknowledgement of my counterclaim because that's not research based, that was just from my brain. And I don't have a note card for my rebuttal, my refutation right here because again, that was just from my brain. If you feel like you're going to forget these two things and you want to jot them down somewhere, since you're only going to have note cards for this part, you can jot them down wherever you would like to, whether that's on a Google Doc, whether that's on a note card that's otherwise blank, okay? But this needs a note card, this red, and this blue needs a note card. I fought back with 2 pieces of evidence, so that makes it even more of a powerful rebuttal. So the big question is, what should your counterclaim be? This takes some creative thinking. Maybe throughout dabbling and researching over the last week or so, you've already thought of what people might say against your charity. If you can't think of anything, you're just going to need to try to be creative. Here are some possible ideas. I didn't want to list too many because I don't want to take the pleasure of your own solving of this puzzle away, but you are welcome to use some of these. So the first bullet point says, like one possible counterclaim is that it's already such a well-known cause, somebody else will probably give. And I think that really is what people think. Like, I'm not going to give to the Susan G. Komen breast cancer charity because everybody gives to that. My money should go somewhere else where nobody else gives. If you want to use that, make sure you can argue against it. You need to actually find research that will support your refutation. So if you say, while some people think it's such a well-known cause that someone else will give, in reality, this charity only is so successful because of how much people give. For example, on their website, and then you would need to give research that shows the success of how much people have given in the past. Bullet point number 2. A possible counterclaim, if you have some sort of international charity, maybe it's focused on the continent of Africa or something like that. The argument usually is like, why would I want to focus on an international cause when we have so many problems in our own country? And then you would need to say, well, that's true in reality, and then you would need to give some sort of reason that fights back. Okay. Another possible counterclaim I've seen in the past, and this one is the same one that I showed you with the animals. There are greater problems to focus on than as is. So this one could be applied to many, but you could say, like, some people think that we shouldn't focus on something as specific as prostate cancer when there are greater problems to focus on than that. But in reality, and then you would have to fight back to it. That would work with animal-based charities. That would work with wildlife or environmental-based charities, or, there's many that you could twist that to work with. The last one talks about financial statistics. If your charity doesn't have like the number one best finances ever, you can acknowledge that. You can say, while some people might not be inclined to give to a charity who only spends 75% of its money on its actual organization, the reality is that 20% is going to fundraising. And the reason why that's important is because they need to get the word out. And you could argue back. If your charity doesn't have like the best financial statistics, acknowledge that in your counterclaim. Just be prepared to fight back to it and show why it's okay that they don't have the best finances. Okay, good luck and be creative with this.